Hi again, everybody. Welcome to another edition of My Faith with Homer and Pip. Homer.
Still the same. Mother Teresa said it. My secret is a simple one. I pray. I just want everybody to know I didn't believe it when I saw it the first time. There's got to be more. Nope. That's it. And it hasn't changed. I want to be the person when they see someone see me says, I know you. Mother Teresa, my secret is a simple one. I pray. Yes, I want them to be tired of me saying it. I'm not there yet. Pip?
And then when people pray, as you know, good things happen, the goodness of God. And our guest, Bob Glowacki, is an example of that. Can't wait to hear his faith journey. We are My Faith with Homer and Pip. We're produced by Brett Young. I'm Tommy Pippins. Homer and the Holy Spirit put this endeavor together, which we hope and pray will help you on your journey to and through the cross. So without further ado, welcome, Bob. Thanks again. And Homer, tee it up, buddy.
This one's a little different because I want your official title, Bob. People need to know your title before I ask you about your story.
Okay. Well, I am Bob Glowacki, and I am happy to be the Chief Executive Officer for St. Vincent DePaul in Waukesha County.
We'll get to that. That's
I,
generally very important, but not on my faith. My faith leads with not just your story, but my fascination with how you decide to start your story. My faith. Take it away.
yeah, I knew this was the first question, and I had to think about where I wanted to start. I think with most people, it starts with your parents. And so I had two wonderful examples, my mom and dad, of Christian living. Our home, my father went to a minor seminary. I don't know if he wanted to be a priest or a Franciscan, but on the other hand, every holiday, every time we got as a family, he took a chance to go and be on his pulpit. Prayer was about 7 to 10 minutes, but it was a prayer of emotion, whether it be Easter or Christmas. And it wasn't just about the family gathered around the table. It was the reason for the season. And so to me, that meant every holiday had a very special and its real meaning, not just Santa Claus, but really the birth of Christ and what that meant to our world. My mom was a regular mass goer every single day. The rosary was her friend. She worked it regularly for all of us. She had 6 kids, so she had a lot to pray for. And both of them taught me a great deal. I was so proud of both of them. My mom passed away at 87. My dad just this year at 91. Our church seats about 600 people, and there was almost no room in the house for everything that they had done in their lives, the way they lived their lives, the way they did business, and even serving in our community. So whenever I say my last name, there's always something where I feel I have to live up to what they did. And that's really kind of made me understand, as my dad would constantly say, what that which a person who's been given much, much is expected. And so it left for a pretty high standard of what I needed to do in my life.
Yeah, now I got so many questions. First of all, Dad says that you had to at some point go, come on, Dad. You've told me that a million times.
He was repetition works. Repetition works. No, I think I felt the same way. I've been a very fortunate man in my life. I was had Catholic school throughout. I thought I was especially lucky to go to Marquette High School. I think that had a profound effect on my faith too, and the Jesuits I met there as well as the lay faculty, and then be able to go to Marquette University. My parents didn't have the money when my brothers and sister were around, but they had the money when I came around, and to able to go to the school that I loved since a little kid. It was just those were all major experiences, and I had wonderful retreat experiences. My dad invited me, and I ignored him for a couple of years until I finally said yes. And so my holy ground is up in Oshkosh at the Jesuit Retreat House. And for 25 years now, that's a place I go every single Holy Week. And now I couldn't live without those few days along Lake Winnebago.
Now, what made you buy in? You don't have to buy in as a kid. People have stories
No.
all the time of their parents. At some point, you bought in and you bought, I don't know if you bought in huge initially. Do you remember the age or when you go, this isn't just what they think, this is right, or this is what I believe, or this is my passion?
I think a couple things. I think one that my parents their faith life and the way they acted and the way they were was not that they were perfect. They're not saints, but uh, they need mercy like we all need mercy. But the way they live their lives, for I had a very strange childhood. My parents ran Pulaski Inn back in Cudahy, and our as I would tell people, if you went to the men's room, went 5 feet too far, you were in our kitchen. And so our house was always open to people coming through. My mom at that kitchen table counseled people about their marriage or problems in the family before the wedding was happening, and in-laws fighting and all this kind of stuff. And she always did it with such ease. And it was the way in which stuff I'm like, Mom, move them along, get them out of here. You know, I want to eat, I want to eat, I want to get to the refrigerator. I can't get in. And that wasn't the way my mom lived her life. And my dad was a soft touch for anybody who asked for a few dollars. Um, and so when I saw what they had, the way they raised all of us, and they seemed relatively happy in life, I felt this must be the better way to do things, to have a faith, a rock to hold on to. When I eulogized my mom, um, one thing that had occurred to me, I never read the story the same way again, was when there's the verse in the Bible where the story, the anecdote that Jesus says about the house built on solid foundation and then one built on sand. And I always in my life, and I learned later being older, things happen, that I'd always read it like, hey, if you're on that rock, that solid foundation, everything will be fine. And when I reread the story, it actually both houses were buffeted by winds and rain and everything else. It's just you have a solid foundation to find your way through. So when you get suffering, when there's job loss, when there's other things that happen that shake you, if you have a solid foundation, it's something to hold on to. It doesn't make it easy, doesn't make it that you're not in pain, and you don't argue with God a lot as to why me, why this. But on the other hand, there's hope that in some way He has a better plan for you. You just haven't figured it out yet.
Now, I gotta believe that you asked your dad, come on, tell me the priest story. Were you actually going to become a priest? What did you ever ask?
No, you know that anybody who's out there, if if your parents are in their 70s and 80s, don't be dumb. Ask the questions. You know, to be honest, they don't tell their life story sometime to their kids. I don't know. I know in his heart he really did, but he had a Polish, obviously a Polish father, and he was supposed to go to Marquette and go to law school. And so he went to law school for about a year and got a C, and that was about it for him. So I don't know if he ever considered the priesthood. And 6 kids later, five and the first 5 and 5 years, he definitely wasn't going to be a priest at that point.
And now, I love doing T-shirts. I'm about 100 behind, but I'll get to them. And I think yours should be "The Rosary is my friend." I've never heard it put that way. Was that what your mom said? Does it fit for you? More, please.
No, it was my mom. My mom was extremely dedicated to the Virgin Mary, and so she was always working those rosary beads. That's my line. Actually, last night, right next to my bedside, is a picture of the crucifix from the retreat house, and on that is my mom's rosary, because those are the two things about my parents I remember the most, and the things that mattered to them a great deal. And my mother kind of had that strength of the Virgin Mary. Recently, again, reflecting on the Gospels and Christmas, she's the only one that was there from the beginning to the end for our Savior. Everybody else kind of ran away, but she was there at the manger and she was there at the cross. And I think some of us forget about that strength that women have, that they don't abandon, they don't walk away. And it gave me greater appreciation for Mary as kind of that first disciple and his longest disciple. And it's just fascinating. I think that's part of, what I would share today was just, if you keep on running these things over in your mind and faith, you get different insights on a regular basis. And for me, my prayer life is different than it was 5 years ago, than it was 10 years ago, et cetera, because I'm kind of ruminating on these things. And every so often I have a Shazam, like, wow, that's really different. And part of it comes with age. What you don't realize some things, and now that my kids are slightly out of the house and everything, more time to think. But now you realize what it's like to be a parent with adults, and now you pray a whole different way. You thought it was going to be so easy once they're out of the house. Now you pray for them in a whole different way than before, when you were afraid of them driving the car at 16 or taken their first step. So I find my prayer life evolves, but my understanding of the Bible sort of evolves in the life because I have more experiences, and then I realize how amazing some of those people are. And they were just, I mean, starting with Mary, she was like 14 when this all began. So it's just mind boggling.
I've got more, but I want to hear Tommy's. Tommy, take it away.
Well, first of all, Bob is my boss as the big cheese at St. Denis DePaul Waukesha.
Vice
So
versa.
yeah, yeah. If this doesn't go well, he could kick me out into the street in my volunteer position. No, I think the world of him because he lives his faith and the good Lord brought him to everyone there, and he's making such a difference. And Bob, I guess I would ask you if you talk a little bit more about your role, how your faith has really worked in concert with your professional life, and you've had some great positions.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate, and I don't know what happened, whether it be Marquette High or Marquette U or both. I wanted to give back. And again, going back to that phrase that rings in my head from my father, that I needed to give back because a lot had been given to me. I'm extremely fortunate. And so to have worked in a couple different places where I really felt like I could give up my entire self. At times, I had a spouse who had to pull me back because at some point you have other responsibilities. But St. Vincent de Paul and what it does, and again, I'm not the boss. Tom and his members are, and our other members. The Vincentians, if you haven't met one, then that's your misfortune. The Vincentians humble me every day in how many hours they put in to serve the poor, to go in to do home visits, to go into the jails, in a lot of places where many others would be hesitant. Even me, I'm no angel. And so to see their inspiration or how their faith affects them, I think that's people can talk about all those in church who may be hypocrites and we don't live up to everything. And I'm sure obviously the Vincentians that I meet have their failures too, or things they wish they were better at. But that God's love so drives them to be there for other people. Last year, our Vincentians, like Tom, put in over 41,000 hours of service in Waukesha County. That's just phenomenal. And so I'm honored to bring my talents and skills, being able to share their story with the rest of the community, because I think it's uplifting. I think it's a feeling that our community, there's people out there who really care, and they just don't want to fill out a check, which will always take your checks. But they want to do more than a donation. They actually want to be there for someone. And I think it's just such a tremendous organization. And there's hundreds of St. Vincent de Paul's around the country doing similar work. And it's been, and to add, my dad was a Vincentian for 50 years. And so it feels like, as I left my last job in April of 2024 and ended up here, it seemed like God had a plan for me, and I'm very glad where I'm at.
One thing I really enjoy about you, and you've tried to share it with those at the St. Dismas Jail Ministry, along with all the other ministries, is that everyone has a story, and we need to share the stories. How does your faith play into that, Bob, in terms
Mhm.
of listening to stories and having the desire to hear everyone's story, whether
Right.
that person is a chief executive officer or
Mhm.
someone who is homeless?
Mhm. I think what, as you guys have been doing in some of the episodes I watched, to hear this other side of people, it is not easy for me, and I'm sure the other people you've had on to talk about their faith. It's, as Catholics, I think we always walk around with those Lenten readings that say, "Don't let your right hand know what the left hand's doing," and everything else about humility. But sometimes I think we miss a chance to share our stories, and I think to me, stories. Break down what people may not understand. If you haven't dealt with someone who's homeless or going through mental illness or have a child with a disability, the stories not only break down to understand what people are going through, but also their resilience and ways. I don't also like, in a sense, having those stories where it's just about feeling bad for somebody in sympathy. I would rather have people in empathy, understanding, boy, those are strong people. I don't know if I could do what they're doing. How can I help them? How can I help them to be their best selves? Because I think there's a lot to learn from everybody, like I said, from our Vincentians and board members down to the people we serve on a daily basis and support and visit, because their lived experience informs. All of us have been through stuff. I think about it in my own life, and I'm sure you guys would too. Sometimes I might have made the wrong decision, but there was something that shoot us out of the way. Don't know what it was. I think of myself of every girl I was crazy about and going, oh my Lord, that would have been a horrible 50 years. And then I found the right woman. And if I hadn't maybe had those bad experiences, I wouldn't have known the good one. And so 26 years of marriage later, I'm still very happy with her decision to be dumb enough to marry me. But I think those things really, those stories help us to understand where we've been. And again, we could be there too. There before the grace of God go I had two loving parents. I can tell you, not just here at St. Vincent de Paul, but other places I've been, that isn't the case. Sometimes mom and dads aren't there. Sometimes there's not a family. Sometimes there's sexual abuse. Sometimes there's trauma. And we don't know how we would all respond to something like that. And so I look upon that, I always think about it. If the first relationships in your life were so bad that your parents weren't there for you, how do you know God's there for you? How do you know anybody's there for you? And so Vincentians and people like them who go out and hold people's hands, I think that is the work of God. And it is the way in which people can feel like they're not alone. And maybe there's something to learn from this misery that you've gone through. But, I know I'd find it hard. I didn't have to face those kind of things.
Would you talk, Bob, about perhaps some of the most challenging times in terms of how that may have related to your faith? When your faith was really challenged, did you go through some of that? And if so, how
Mhm.
did you and the Lord navigate it?
Well, sometimes I think, be careful what you pray for. I always prayed for a challenge. I always prayed for being able to do more and do more. And at times it did strain both just between us, strain the marriage, because it was something where maybe I was giving a little too much and I was losing track. And I had to talk to God about this. Maybe I was in love with my title. Maybe I was in love with being the golden tongued CEO, and I wasn't in touch with being the best dad and the best husband. And so that's when your wife humbles you very quickly and reminds you what matters. But again, it's a little bit of a fight where you're going, God, I'm doing your work. Why are people on me about this? But I had to really ask myself hard questions as to who was I serving, because you can get in love with titles, you can get in love with being at the head table, and so you need to continually humble yourself, and I do that in different ways. I have no problem helping in the smallest of tasks or going behind and helping to collect. If they need me to collect stuff in the back here at St. Vincent de Paul, I'll do it. I'm not above it. And for me, it's continually making sure that what I'm doing is for the greater glory of God, not the greater glory of Bob.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Homer, I know you've got some questions.
Yeah, I've never done this before. And Bob, don't be offended, but I'm not asking just you. I'm asking you and Tommy. And that is, of all that you've done and been around, what wows you the most? I don't want to ask what makes you most proud of, but in the situations and all the things that
Mhm.
you're a part of and you see, and I want to think, what
Mhm.
what wows you? Bob, you get to go first
Yeah.
because
Well,
you're my faith.
You're darn right.
yeah. I guess I'll give you a story. And her name was Olivia. Olivia was an individual with disabilities. She had been adopted from Korea. Her parents had raised her. Everything had gone well. She had a sister that they also had adopted. And Olivia, actually, all of a sudden, when the parents had moved up north, thought up to Door County, and they thought everything was going well. And soon, for some reason, Olivia became very belligerent to her sibling and some other things. They had to come back. And this husband and wife actually slept separately for a year, as one stayed with Olivia and one stayed with the other sibling, and all to sacrifice for their daughters. And Olivia found at Easter Seals a program they did back then called Project Search. And Project Search was an employment program at Children's Hospital. She was in our first class, if I remember right. And in that, you did 3 rotations in that internship over a 9-month period. And I was blessed with really wonderful people. Actually, one of them is a Vincentian in Milwaukee. And they taught Olivia just was wonderful. They loved her at Children's. They hired her at Children's. But on top of it, she got into Special Olympics and actually got gold medals. And she was featured on ESPNW because she was also battling cancer, and she lost that battle. And I've never really forgotten Olivia in that way because she fought through, and her parents. And she became kind of, she became a hero to many. And, she had a lot to overcome, both culturally and, what she went through in her mental health crisis, and then to get a job. So, whenever I didn't know if I was doing the right thing, somebody like Olivia would come along and remind me all I was doing was setting them up for success. That the individual, the family had to take that next step. But, that's why I joined this field. That's why I do what I do.
All right, Tommy, your wow.
Well, one of them is when we're together, which is always the best, but in particular at the Down Syndrome Association of Southeastern Wisconsin Golf Tournament. And Homer, you'd been touched by this as well. These beautiful souls from the Lord, they don't judge or criticize. They're always happy. They're always hugging you. And there's nothing better. The other thing for me is making these video visits. Recently, we have interacted with a couple of women who have been victims of human sex trafficking, which is so prevalent in Wisconsin and around the world. And to see all that they have gone through, the hurt, the pain, and sometimes they have turned for soothing to drugs, to alcohol. But with all they're going through, they still have not abandoned faith. And if anything, they've run to the Lord as opposed to running away from him, because addiction, as we know, is so shame-based. And when I go in there trying to offer something, 99 times out of 100, I come away saying, wow, totally blessed. What an inspiration. Thank you for helping me in my own journey. Bob, just one more, because I think Homer's got a couple, but I wanted to ask you, paraphrasing Blessed Frederick Ozanam, who, of course, with the great saint, founded St. Vincent de Paul, and you have this at the top of your, as it relates to St. Vinny, if you
Mhm.
Google, you'll find Bob, where he says something like, you want to get better and do good, do a
Yep.
little good. Would you
Yep.
talk about that around your faith, please?
I actually, it was funny when I read that quote. I want to get a little better and do a little good. One, it really, going back to my dad, it really felt like a phrase he would like. Nothing pompous or arrogant. It's not something you can't achieve. It's something that you're working towards. And it actually matched the way I approach every New Year's. I never do New Year's resolutions, but I always hope I'm just a little better next year. I hope I'm just a better faithful Catholic. I hope I'm a better husband. I hope I'm a better dad. And, I hope some of the things that my shortcomings are just a little less short. I'm a little bit better. And so for me, that always worked well. I mean, even hell, lose a couple pounds. I don't need to lose 20. If I can lose a couple, just kind of that attitude is something I think that's also very healthy. I think we sometimes set goals that we can't achieve. People are saying, hey, I don't really have a prayer life, or it's weak or something like that. I'm like, just find 5 minutes. Just start with something. Find a prayer book you like and promise you're going to read it before bed every night. I remember Father John Schwantes at the retreat house. I said, Father, I just don't pray. I don't get enough prayer in. He's like, you have two little kids at home. I don't have any children. It's not your time to pray. It's time for you to be a father. You'll find time to pray. Now it's totally different. Two kids are out of the house. I take time every day to take time to pray. For a while, I was doing the readings of the day in preparation for my day. Now I've taken on Father Mike Schmitz. He does an app of the Bible in a year. So I'm on day 48. So I'm listening to that in my commute back and forth, and just I'm blown away that it's just teaching me all, especially in the Old Testament. I'm learning so much. But 5 years ago, I couldn't do that, and time wise and everything else. So I think if anybody feels like there isn't enough time, I think one, remember the gift you were given, in that everybody you love and hopefully you are going to be in heaven one day for eternity. And I think for that gift, for that sacrifice that Jesus gave, another Jesuit once said, when Jesus was on the cross, he saw all of us at that moment, every sinner of every time. He was dying for you. They're great at guilt. Jesuits are great at that. And so I'm like, when you have that picture, then it's like, yeah, I can give 10 minutes. And again, I started out like I had a little book, Hearts on Fire, by the Jesuits, all of them little poems, very short. I read 2 or 3 a night. And then I was kind of tired from being a dad and a CEO and everything else, and I wanted to go to bed. But those prayers became something I used on a regular basis. But that's what I had time for at the time. Now I can do more, and I try to do more. Before I wouldn't attend some of the activities at church that weren't on Sundays. Now I do. And so I think those are the kind of things if you keep on evolving your faith life, just like you try to evolve as a human being or in weight loss or anything like that, just adding a little bit more. The important thing is to get started. Because again, as you talked about, Tom, with the women you've met, and just in general, just most of the people I work with in my life. And if they didn't have a strong faith life, you do hear a lot of stories that would really make you drink. It would be difficult unless you have a faith life to fall back on to go, God, I don't understand, but I believe there's a plan. I know you have a plan. And, one of my favorite prayers is, Lord, make me worthy to be a Christian, to be named a Christian. Because that's just something where I'm like, I know I'm not good enough, but if I keep praying for it, that's another one priest once taught me, was just keep praying for it. And sooner or later, you'll have it, although he also warned, if you pray for patience, God will, send things your way to practice your patience. So be ready for it. But just in general, I keep on praying for things that I know I'm weak at, hoping that God will give me the grace to get better at it.
Homer.
Yeah. Now, you've probably heard this if you've watched some of the others, but you get 60 seconds. Someone you can see as a growing faith. You got 60 seconds to sell a faith, to sell your faith. You got it. We get the top of the food chain. What are you going to say in that 60 seconds to that person?
I look upon it this way. When it comes to faith to me is like oxygen. I couldn't live without it. It's what keeps me sane. It's what keeps I've never felt that it's important to guilt somebody else to get into faith as much as to say there is something in your life that makes you so happy and helps to center you and helps to center your family on values of what really matters in the world, when there's so much in the world that you should ignore and do with less of, that I don't know how you could live without it. I actually, in my way, I feel sorry for those who don't have it. It's the way I think I feel sorry for them, because I think living in a secular world with a secular attitude will leave you starved, and only faith will help to guide you and guide your children. And that's the most things that I always thought about when it came to faith, is what values were my children going to have? And I certainly wanted to have one that was based on sacrifice and one based on thinking of others and not themselves.
And lastly, not your parents. They clearly had just this amazing impact, and I can't imagine how special they feel. Like, yeah, Bob got it. He got it. But that's another issue. That's not for my faith. But other people that you've run across that have impressed you, because I can't speak for Pip. That's going to make me think they're special. But you mentioned, I think one priest. But I know you came across people that just really impressed you, or you learned from them, or it changed you or developed you. I don't know what the right word is.
I would say overall, the Jesuits I met, they are so. And if people don't know, that's a Catholic order of priests. They run Marquette University, Marquette High, and among other things. But the thing that always impressed to me about them was, one, their personal connection. I tell a story, and people can't believe this. A former president, Marquette High, we were at the Catholic Souls walk, and there's like 5,000 people. It was the first year they did it. And he's walking through the crowd, and he comes up, "Hey, Bob, how are you?" And again, he'd been my teacher and stuff for 20 years, and I was a smart aleck, so I knew he remembered me. But then he turned to my wife and said, "Hey, Krista, how are you?" And it had been 20 years since he'd been at our wedding, and he was able to do that. And what that told me is how much time they spend connecting with individuals, and that each person matters. And then to see a number of them who are friends of mine, who were maybe presidents of high schools or universities, and their next stop was the Indian Mission in South Dakota, where they had been wined and dined and hanging out with the elite, and the next thing they were doing was teaching kids on an Indian reservation about Jesus. And that they just went and did it because that was about obedience. Or they were up at the retreat house. Those types of, or even in the end, actually, Jesuits, even as they age, then they're put in service and prayer. that they may be somewhere, but they're there to pray for their donors, they're pray for friends. And so they never really end missioning. And that's the part that kind of impressed me the most was that, even a good priest friend of mine, Father Burns, who actually brought me to Marquette High, he introduced my parents to the school. They thought, hey, my kid's not smart enough to get in. And they were kind of right, but I got in anyways. And but he had been at Market High for 19 years, had known all the kids, and his next stop was Minnesota in a parish where there was no other Jesuits other than the ones he was living with, and that he accepted that. And probably at the time he was probably about my age, a little bit older. Everything he had built, all the friends he had, off he was going to Minneapolis, and we all visited him, including me and my wife. But that kind of obedience and understanding God had a plan for me, even if I don't understand it, that's something that has really made an impact with me. And just in general, for people who don't know, those Jesuits go to school for about 8 to 10 years before they become ordained. So there is so many things that they've taught me along the way at the Jesuit Retreat House in Oshkosh and others, that those things just stay with me. I wouldn't be the man I am if I hadn't come in contact with them.
Well,
Oh,
Pip, Tommy, I'll let you finish, but it's funny. He says he learned never stop missioning. Geez, I wonder who comes to mind, Tommy, with somebody who's never stopped missioning. Take it away.
well, I'm just sitting here thinking how very proud Bob's mom and dad are listening from heaven and living on through him. And it's been a great delight. Bob, I think you've covered all the bases beautifully, but I just wonder if there's anything else that perhaps we haven't covered or you've shared that you want to let people know.
I think I feel like one of the things I've talked about with Tom and the board is I want a lot of Vincentians. I want a lot of members. So if this is the first you're hearing about the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, look into it in your local parish. Also, you don't need to be Catholic. Associate members and others can join. But the work that they do in going to visit people and holding their hands and supporting individuals in the community is no social service agency is ever going to be able to duplicate. To have somebody come to see you because they care about you and want the best for you. All those other folks are paid to be there. These folks aren't paid to be there. So if something I'm saying today makes that your stomach turn or something in your head turn, God's talking to you. God's telling you to look into it. And if not, something like St. Vincent Paul, something similar, because I think that that's what the world needs, and it needs more people who are doing that direct support to another human being. We have far too much being impersonal by cell phones and texts and whatever. We need some in-person time. So if anything I'm saying is touching your heart, that's not my words. It's God calling you. So look into it. Look how you can give back in a very personal way. Because to be honest, Tom can talk to his own experience. It's not just what you do for others; it's the community you join. And just like this community via YouTube and so forth is a community. There's a very special community that you can join and feel a part of, and find a way to give back to the community you've grown up in.
Thank you for that. It is in giving that we receive. You and Homer are great examples of that. Carol Maurer, one of our leaders, when they went to hire Bob, said, we turned this over to the Holy Spirit, and he came to us. So Holy Spirit's pretty awesome. Holy Spirit and Homer got together to put together this endeavor, My Faith with Homer and Pip. Bob, thank you so much. It has
Thank
been
you,
an
guys.
absolute blessing. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Homer, I love you. And Brent Young, our producer, we can't do it without you. This has been My Faith with Homer and Pip. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope and pray that this share has been of some value to you. We think it will be, again, as you go through your own challenges and what have you, but knowing that ultimately the victory is in Christ, and Jesus, we trust in you. So for these fine gentlemen, I'm Tommy Pippin. See you next time on My Faith with Homer and Pip. God bless you, everybody.